learning outcomes. After reading this chapter, you'll be able to describe key elements of adolescent identity development, evaluate the genetic, social, cultural influences on identity, understand creativity and cultural changes as part of adolescent development. Introduction. Adolescence has been summed up as beginning in biology and ending in culture. This is puberty, starts with a cascade of hormonal and neurological changes, and it ends when young people take on adult roles and responsibilities in their society. There are, of course, many significant milestones along the way, key one of which is identity development. Who I am. What do I want to be? Who does society want me to be? The answers to these questions are not straightforward. They require experimentation, and they are rarely all solved by adulthood. Exactly where adolescence begins and ends is a fuzzy boundary that changes over time, place, and the new data Sarah Jane Blakemore has shown how areas of the brain continue to develop throughout adolescence and into adulthood, with regions involved in decision-making, planning, and self-awareness, still developing into the 20s and 30s, Blakemore 2018. Jeffrey Arnett has argued that people aged 18 to 25 are best defined as emerging adults, who have some of the cognitive and social characteristics of more established adults, but who still live at home, are financially dependent, and typically have no children, at least in industrialized societies. Arnett 2000. However we define it, adolescence can be a challenging transition, but it can also be a time of great personal growth, liberation, and optimism. In this chapter, we explore the genetic and social influences on identity development, how adolescents gain greater autonomy over their lives, and how they construct their identities in a network of social relationships. We also celebrate the creative achievements of adolescence and aim to understand teenage rebelliousness as a driver of cultural change. Who am I? Personal identity is our sense of who we are, the imaginary I hovering above our heads that follows us around. What makes you, you? While this might sound abstract, identity is written through our everyday experience. A consistent sense of self makes the person who had breakfast this morning feels like the same me, who took the dog for a walk last Tuesday. Up until this point in development, though, who am I? Has generally never seemed like a question that needs an answer. It's rare to find a 5-year-old gripped by the existential angst of an identity crisis. But from early adolescence onwards, adolescents started to question and explore their identities in great depth. They begin to re-examine who they thought they were, and they imagine who they might like to be in the future. Key point: identity development is an important part of adolescence, in which young people work out who they are, what they believe in, and how they will present themselves to others. Part of who adolescents are, indeed part of who we all are, we can blame on or give credit to the parents. This is because a consistent finding from behavioural genetics is that all psychological traits, including personality, show heritability. Plomin et al. 2016. Oh my goodness. That wasn't supposed to have live viewers. That was supposed to be private. Oops. Heritability is a measure of how well difference in people's genes account for difference in their traits, and we inherit half of our genes from each parent. Personal identity is complex and always changing, but researchers have found that they can predict parts of how our lives will turn out, like which job we'll end up doing, and overall happiness of categorizing our personality traits into 5 dimensions: extroversion, social, egregious, assertive, active, exciting, cheerful; 2, agreeableness, trusting, honest, altruistic, compliant, modest, tender-minded, conscientious, competent, orderly, dutiful, achievement-orientated, disciplined, plans ahead, emotional stability, the opposite of narcissism, calm, friendly, happy, and not self-conscious, future thinking, thick-skinned, not vulnerable, and openness to experience, imaginative, artistic, emotional, deep, experimental, curious, diverse. McRae and Costa, 2008. To find how people differ on these traits, researchers asked people to place themselves on a continuum based on whether they agree or disagree with different statements. Figure 12.1. In an analysis that combined the results of 134 separate studies on personality traits representing more than 100,000 people, it was shown that around 50% of an individual's difference were due to a genetic influence, while 50% were due to environmental influences. Vokasovic and Bratko, 2015. While genetics might provide a starting point of our personal identities, the environment we experience can significantly nudge us into different directions. For example, someone born with a predisposition to score 8 out of 10 on the extroversion scale might be unlikely to ever be as introverted as someone scoring 2 out of 10. However, in some environments, this tendency for extroversion can be amplified to be a 10 out of 10 or dampened down to a 6 out of 10. I'm 4.5. I am the life of the party. I start conversations. I enjoy being the centre of attention. Extroversion. I prefer my own company. I keep it in the background at parties. I am quiet around strangers. Agreeableness. I feel others' emotions. I take time out for others. I make people feel at ease. I feel little concern for others. I frequently often offend others. I am not interested in helping others. Conscientiousness. I like to follow a schedule. I am always prepared. I like to complete tasks early. I feel happy in disorder. I leave my belongings around. I am often spontaneous. Emotional stability. I am relaxed most of the time. I seldom feel blue. My mood is stable in different situations. I get easily stressed. I worry about things a lot. I have frequent mood swings. Openness. I am conscious about how things work. I am willing to try new things. I have a vivid imagination. I am not interested in abstract ideas. I spend time reflecting on things. I am resistant to new experiences. Figure 12.1. The big 5 personality traits with statements that exemplify each trait. Note that the actual personality questionnaire researchers use contains more example statements. When researchers have looked at other aspects of people's character, intelligence, psychological illness, addiction, this is similarity a 50-50 split on average between genetic and environmental influences. So while it is true that all psychological traits show that no such traits are completely heritable. Blooming, Tell, 2016. Key point, genetic and environmental influences are significant factors in explaining the differences between people's personalities. The easiest way to calculate heritability is to compare identical twins who shares 100% of their genes with non-identical twins who share 50%, as do regular siblings in general. The more genes and environmental context people share, the likelier they are to be similar. Oh, so genetic makeup of twins is different to normal siblings. I didn't know that. I can't believe this has gone live. This is really annoying. And people are watching it for some reason. Table 12.1. The relationship between pairs of people regarding intelligence and neuroticism, the opposite of emotional stability. 100%. 100 means that we are no one individual's score, and we're able to perfectly predict that the other individual's score. 0 means that there is no relationship. Data adapted from Knopf et al. 2017. Identical twins reared together, intelligence 86, narcissism 46. Identical twins reared apart, intelligence 78, neuroticism 38. Non-identical twins reared together 60, intelligence, neuroticism 20. Siblings reared together, intelligence 47, neuroticism 9. Biological parents and offspring, intelligence 42, neuroticism 13. Adopted parents and offspring, intelligence 19, neuroticism 5. Adopted siblings, intelligence 32, neuroticism 11. Source adapted from Knopf et al. 2017. There are 3 further details of the big picture that are important for understanding identity development. First, heritability estimates actual increase with age, giving some scientific support to the concern you might have that you are turning into your parents. For example, heritability of intelligence is around 20% in infancy, but rises to 60% in adulthood. Hayworth et al. 2010. Second, heritability is caused by many genes, each of which contributes a small effort. This means that it is unlikely, if not impossible, that we will find one gene that is solely responsible for something as multifaceted as personality. And for this reason, we should be skeptical of newspaper headlines that claim a single gene is responsible for any complex behavior. Heritability estimates can make it sound as if genes directly influence behavior. They don't. A gene is just a strip of DNA that lines up the amino acids which build proteins that make cells, some of which might turn into neurons, some which might end up inside brains and make decisions in response to in other brains and environment. The many links in this causal chain sum up one reason why the relationship between genes and behavior is many to many and not one to one. Third, environmental influence. It's itself inheritable in some extent. How can this be? Imagine we find that the number of books in a child's home is associated with their academic outcomes. The more books they have on the shelf, the better they do at school. From this, we conclude that the home environment is important for academic success. The question is, who put the books on the shelf? It was probably the parents, who might have been dealt a genetic hand that predisposes them to reading, not as a gene for reading, but as a more general set of personality traits that make reading an enjoyable thing for them to do. In this scenario, the parents pass on a degree of those traits to their children, who also become predisposed to enjoy similar things. We can think of this in the Nature via Nurture, Ridley 2003. This doesn't mean that reading books is an inevitable thing for these children to do. Far from it. We're talking about predisposition, not a law, but a bias to the act in one way over another. If there are no books on the shelf in the first place, as was the case in most human history, then these biases get plugged into different activities that feel similarly rewarding. The idea that the environment becomes an extension of who we are is perhaps far more familiar to us than we realise. Behaviours, for example, modify their environment by building dams, and we can think of dams as an extension of beavers' nature, so that the heritability of dams in the environment is caused by beaver parents and their offspring sharing similar dam building genes. In the comparable way, the heritability of books on the shelf is caused by parents and their children sharing genes that make reading an enjoyable activity. The important point is that it is hard to find a pure measure of the environment that is not affected by genetics, because the environment is not something that's just out there. It has been profoundly affected by humans for hundreds of generations. Humans carry genes, and for that reason we can expect the environment to show some degree of heritability too. Key points. Estimates of heritability increase throughout a lifespan. Heritability is caused by many genes, each of which contributes a small effect. The environment shows some degree of heritability too. Thank you for watching. I'm taking my first break.